Hey everyone, I'm just making a quick vlog here now because I recently got to see Evil Dead the Musical being done at the Jewish Community Center down by Oak and 41st, and I'm going to say this right, it's going to be a review of this show, and I just want to say right off the bat that I'm not a big fan of musicals. I don't think there's anything really particularly super wrong with them. They're just they're not my style of theater that I'm always excited to go see. I think there's a lot of bad musicals out there, and especially musicals that are being done based on movies. I'm never excited to go see those. I think there's a few exceptions, like there's a few shows I wouldn't mind seeing because they have such a strong influence in music already, like The Wedding Singer, The Wedding Singer musical. I've never seen it, I don't know much about it, but sorry, my computer likes to make noises sometimes. I haven't heard too much about it actually, to be honest, but something like that makes more sense to me than something like Evil Dead that is such an iconic horror classic of trilogy of movies. One of my favorite series of movies ever. Probably the second movie is one of, if not in my top 3, my top 5 favorite movies of all time, Evil Dead 2. So it's not like I wasn't excited to go see it, because I had a lot of friends involved with it, so I was happy to go see them work. But I think, for me personally, I know that for me personally, I wasn't very excited to go see it in the first place. When the musical was first announced, way back, I think I was still living in Fort McMurray at the time, I think, when it was announced, so that's maybe 10 years ago, if not more. I wasn't excited for it then. It's never really appealed too much to me. That being said, though, it wasn't like I just wrote it off right away because it's a movie musical. I actually own the CD of the musical, and I've had it on my iPod for a long time. So it's not like I hated everything about it. And that being said, though, I'm not even the biggest fan of the soundtrack itself. There's a few songs I really enjoy. But I'm just saying this to set this up in the sense that musicals aren't really my taste. So some of the things I'm going to say here, if you love musicals, if you love campy musicals, this is the show for you. Straight up to the point. It is a very good show if that's what you're into. If you're into campy musicals, then you're going to have a great time watching this show. I'm just going to go off right off the bat. Let's just start from the very beginning here, and I'll do a little summary at the end. So the first thing you see when you walk in, well, actually, is a drop of the forest, which is kind of boring, but my favorite thing about this show, the number one thing that I loved more than anything else, was the set design of the cabin. It was I want to say amazing. It didn't amaze me, but it was very gripping. It was extremely well done. It looked very realistic. It looked not just like the movie Cabin, but it looked very similar to the movie Cabin. It took up a lot of space and it had a lot of character. And for anyone who knows the movies, when the Deadites start getting nuts and start going crazy on everything and everybody, you just see this. You see the cabin come alive at one moment, and everything is just so beautifully done, and it's a beautiful looking set. It is a beautiful, beautiful set. The set design was done by, I have a little cheat sheet here. The set was done by John Bessett, and it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. It was my absolute favorite part about the show. Great set. And what really helped it was a lot of the lighting design. There was a lot of people working on lights. I didn't write them all their names down. It was a big group effort for the lights. So the lights in the set really came together perfectly, and made you had the atmosphere and you had the character. The set was a character, just like how the cabin in the movie was a character. That really translated for me personally, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. On top of that, kicked the camera. I'm not really working with a lot of space. I just kicked the camera by accident. The next thing that I really enjoyed actually was the choreography done. The choreographer was Ken Overby. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Ken. I'm talking a little bit fast. It's getting late and I kind of need to go to bed. I got work tomorrow morning and I just wanted to get this out there. But Ken Overby did the choreography. It's great. He did the music justice, the style of the music and the style of his dancing and the performers of it. Everyone is a very strong mover in this show. No one can't move. It's a very well done physically show. vocally, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Not the singing though. The singing was great. It's a lot of the character choices for voices. The actor playing Ash, I didn't write him down. Sorry. I thought he did a good job, but I didn't like his voice. His character voice. I don't know if this was a directing choice or if it was something that he brought in, but he kind of did Ash with this William Shatner-esque type speech, which for me didn't work. It didn't translate properly for me. It could be because I hold the character in such high regard, and even in Ash and Evil Dead 1, when he's not as confident as he is by the end of Army of Darkness, I even rewatched the movies before I did this, just so I made sure I wasn't crazy on a lot of things, and he would kind of say the cabin was evil. And I guess that goes with the campy nature of musicals, but for me it didn't translate and it didn't work. I thought it took me out of it, really, and I really didn't want to root for him anymore. I wasn't a big fan of him. That being said, when he got badass, he was badass, but then he would drop out of badassness for this kind of knowing that this is a funny way to talk. And it's not a choice for me. You know, it's like, the beautiful thing about art is that it's subjective. So what I don't like, someone might love. And for me personally, I didn't like it. Did it ruin the show for me? Not at all. Not at all. One thing that was tough to get through with the show is that they had a lot of mic issues. There was a few times, I don't know what caused it, maybe it'd be going up on the pitch or the volume of the actor's voice, but you would get like a buzz, like a hiss. Surprisingly, it only affected one song, and it affected it for a long period of time though, so it ruined that song. But besides that, the hissing didn't really come up too much, but it came up often enough that I want to make a note of it. I'm sure they fixed it by now. It's one of those things where, you know, the day of, something happens, and then you realize and you got to fix it for everything else. It's the beauty of live theater. What else? The Makeup by Richard Elsom. It's not bad by any means. It's not bad. It's very well done for, I believe, the budget they had, as well as doing live theater. You can't really compare the makeup to stage to the makeup of the film. The thing that kind of irked me, though, about it is that you knew exactly every single time someone was going to turn. They had a really good idea of making the Deadite faces masks. I don't know how they fit on, I don't know any of that stuff, but you could tell they were easily put on and taken off. And you would learn this you know who was going to turn, because they would either go off stage and then come back, or their head would go into a window, or their head would be looking into the hallway, or their head would be in the cellar, or their head would hit a painting and their head would stay there for a long period of time. Suggesting there's a hole in the wall and someone's backstage going really quickly like this to make sure that their mask is perfect. Okay, go. Which is, you know, you have to do it for the theater. But that's why, another reason why I think doing a movie musical, again, such as Evil Dead, where the Deadites, a big way that they get to Ash and other characters, Henrietta being my favorite Deadite in all of them, you know, to mess around with Annie changes back into how she looked like as Annie's mother, and would sing to her and talk to her so sweetly and so nicely, and just toying with Annie's emotions. And like every single time Linda would turn from Deadite Linda to normal Linda to torture Ash, you know, you do that way better in film, because you have the camera, you can have cuts, you can have like makeup people, you have close-ups, so it has to be a different type of makeup. So again, that's just a point I'm using to establish that I don't like movie musicals. I think, because I go see a movie musical like Shrek or something, and the whole time I'm sitting there watching like, yeah, this is really good. It looks way better in the movie that it's from. I can appreciate what they're doing. I can appreciate the hard work, because it's extremely hard work. But why would I want to? I don't know. For me personally, it doesn't translate as good as I could see it in the film that it's based on, and the film that's based on is what made it popular, not the musical. When musicals get turned into movies, it's usually because the musical is popular. And musicals I like that get turned into movies don't necessarily work. This isn't a movie versus musical thing for me. It's the quality of the material itself. So the makeup is good for stage. It's very good for what they need for stage, and it has to be the way it is for the show that they're doing. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm totally shitting on it, because I'm not. It's what they needed to do. I'm just comparing it to the movie as a point to make that I don't like movie musicals very much for that reason. Now, I've already talked about Ash very briefly, but I'm just going to give a little bit more of an overview. Yes, his voice I didn't like, personally. Don't know if that's the actor or the director, or maybe it's even the script. I don't know what it was, but I personally did not like it. And that's my choice. That being said, physically, that actor was really well done. Give me a second, actually. I'm going to grab his name right here in the booklet. I can't just keep saying that actor. He's playing Ash. I should be more respectful to him. Scott Walters. Scott Walters. Yeah. He's a very talented actor. Very good singer. Very good dancer. It's literally just the voice. And I don't know, again, who's to say, like, who's to blame for that, but he does a great job with everything else, you know. Very, like, his physicality was great. Some things went wrong during the show I saw, and he handled it perfectly, very professional, and still made everything make sense. His overreactions to things was funny. I mean, there wasn't a lot of moments in this show that I laughed out loud, but I did enjoy a lot of his reactions to things. It would get a smile out of me, which is good. Like, he's doing his job, because Ash, from the second movie to the third movie, especially the third movie, is a goofball. He's an absolute goofball, and you should be having fun with the fact that you're playing this machismo guy who's really kind of dumb. I mean, like, Evil Dead: A Fistful of Boomstick, the video game for the PlayStation 2, which is one of my favorite video games, he even has a line he quotes when he's killing Deadites, where he goes, "I may not be a smart man, but I know what killing is." And I think that's, for me, that's always stood out as something that is very Ash. That is extremely Ash. He's not intelligent, but he knows how to handle Deadites. And that's why he's the chosen one. Other actors I really enjoyed. Definitely Matthew Graham as Ed. Now, Ed, he doesn't have much to say, really, until he gets his song. And that really works. He plays that very well, as being he wants to say something but always being cut off. And it's really funny, because I actually rewatched the second movie after watching the show, because I was like, I thought he had more to do than that, but really Ed doesn't say much at all in the movie. He has one of the most iconic images of the second movie. In my opinion, it's one of, it gets burned in my brain ever since I was a kid. That image of his face when he's a Deadite in the movie stands out to me. So the whole film of him being the whole song about him being unmemorable and not influential, I can't pronounce words right now. I disagree with that, and that's an issue with the script, not with the actors or anything. But Mr. Matthew Graham, he is definitely trained to dance. He moves his body so well. I mean, like, just like a walk he could do was amazing. Like, on stage, physically, his presence steals it. He doesn't have to say a word. He just has to walk from one end of the stage to the other while something else is happening, and you're going to be watching him because of the way he moves his legs. He can shake his legs like Elvis as he walks. He just has it's unnatural, but so easy for him to do walk, and I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant, and it's a lot. I don't know how, for me, that's a lot of hard work. I can see a lot of hard work going into that, and I really appreciated it as an audience member and as an actor, that simply him not having any lines, but just existing in the scene was fantastic. Was absolutely fantastic. Matthew, huge props, dude. You killed it. Matthew Graham, man. You stole this show for me. I loved you. Matt Baker is Jake. Talk about... okay. Matthew, I love your physicality, but Matt, vocally, you understand comedy. You get it. You absolutely get your timing. You absolutely get your emphases. He is so funny as Jake. And Jake is Good Old Reliable Jake is my favorite song from the musical. And when he starts to sing it, the person I went with, we're both from Alberta. And so the first movement he does in his song is Cadillac Ranch, like the line dance to Cadillac Ranch, and we were the only people in the audience who laughed, and I think it was just like our hick Albertanness coming out, where everyone else is from Vancouver and didn't have to take a gym class where for a week you did Cadillac Ranch. So we absolutely lost it, and like from there on he had me like, I know what happens to him in the movies, and so I was waiting for it, but again, like, you have lots of other actors on stage who are good and funny and everything as well. Like, these are the ones I'm pointing out because they were the ones that stuck out the most for me. But everyone does a good job. But these two, in particular to me, really stood out more than anybody else. So it's not to say that those people weren't funny, but I don't know what it was about them, but they just understood it a lot more, about the comedy of their characters a lot more. And there wasn't a single moment with Ed or Jake that I was like, okay, I get the joke, move on. And I don't know, again, if that's a director, an actor, or a script problem. Because, yeah, Jake and Ed, for me, stole the show. Ed, for sure, was an actor-director collaborator, and I think that's why he worked the best. Jake, I'm not sure about, but he was, again, stellar. Having Jake and Ed on stage at the same time was a treat for me. I always loved those scenes. So yeah, those are the two picks of the show. If I was to say, like, to go see the show for this particular actor, as some people do, like go see Hamlet for blank doing Hamlet, I would say go see this show. If you love dance and physicality, go see this show for Ed. Go see this show for Matthew Graham. If you love good slapstick as well as delivered line comedy, you go see this for Matt Baker playing Jake. Because they're on different sides of the comedy spectrum, but they both own what they were doing, and it was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. I already talked about choreography, the set design, the makeup. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm just going to talk about my biggest issue with the script, and I've kind of already touched on it a tad a bit. I don't like the script. I really don't like it. I don't know how much they changed from the original one, because I never saw the original one, because I wasn't interested in seeing it. Because it's exactly my issue. It's extremely hard to do a movie to stage. It is very hard. They're two very different mediums. And I feel that when you're doing something like Evil Dead to make it a campy musical, fine. That's your right. That's your creative process. Great. Do it. And lots of people love this musical. Lots of people do. I think I'm a minority in this. But I just don't. I don't see the point in it. I don't enjoy it as much. Yes, there was things about this production I loved. I have no problem admitting that. But overall, the script is what hinders it. They make all these jokes. I originally went with just one person, but we ran into a friend of mine while we were there. And I sat in between them. And I was the Evil Dead super nerd. And they were just people who went to theater. Well, not just went to theater. There were people involved in the theater community. There were so many jokes where I felt like I was the only one laughing in the theater. Because the way that it's written is that you have all these jokes that are just made for people who know the movies well, or at least know the movies a little bit. And then you throw in a bunch of quotes from the films, whether they fit the situation or not, just to get, like, as they say in wrestling, cheap heat from the audience. You know? And I didn't enjoy those moments. And there was things about, I'm going to go back a little bit to my friends who didn't know anything about the movies. One of the first jokes that they didn't understand was when Annie gets off the plane from Cairo. Annie and Ed are the ones sharing a lot of scenes together, and so Annie's basically talking to herself but using Ed as like a sounding board. And she's bringing up how bad the flight was, and the worst part about the flight is that the only in-flight movie was Spider-Man 3, and the director of that should be shot. Do you understand the joke? I'm going to give you some time to understand the joke. Sam Raimi directed the Spider-Man movies as well as the Evil Dead movies. That's the joke. They didn't get that. These aren't people who've been living underneath a rock. They just didn't get that. One joke that I know for a fact I laughed at and nobody else was a Jake joke. He was talking about his girlfriend Bobby Joe and how, originally I was going through the woods through Bobby Joe, but then I thought bringing her along would be irrelevant. I was the only one who laughed. The joke there being in Evil Dead 1, Ash's sister, Cheryl, is attacked and raped by trees when they get possessed by demons. And that's how she gets possessed. In Evil Dead 2, Bobby Joe gets so scared inside the cabin that she runs out, gets attacked and raped by trees, and dies. That's the joke. You've already had a tree rape scene with Cheryl earlier in the play, so making Bobby Joe a character is irrelevant because that quota's already been filled. Ha. And there's little things like that throughout the entire movie where they make little references to Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, and then other Sam Raimi films. And, they just die on the audience. They just die on the audience. And I honestly feel that the thing holding back this show more than anything else is the script. It doesn't know who it wants to be for. Because on one hand, it's a campy, bright musical making fun of horror films. Not even Evil Dead, but horror films in general. And on the other hand, you have Evil Dead quote, Sam Raimi references and Evil Dead references that nobody but people who really know the movies would understand and laugh at. So why do you have this? If you want to make a musical insulting horror movies, great! Do it! It'd be so funny! It'd be Cabin in the Woods on stage! That would be hilarious! You leave out all the parts about, the other government building and then going into a thing. If you literally just had, Friday the 13th Part 2, the musical, it would be hysterical. Because that's where all those tropes come from. I said this, I watched the first and second Evil Dead movies before I started filming this. Because there were so many things that they threw in the script that I was like, that's not how Scott acts. That's not how Scott acts in the movie. Why is he acting like this in the film? Because that's the way they wrote it. Because they couldn't trust just making fun of the material or making something completely different. They needed the Evil Dead branding name so that everyone would be involved. Do you know what you should just straight up do? I might just do this myself. I don't know. Just make Horror Movie the Musical. And then you set up, because the Cabin in the Woods, or just being in the woods in general, is a horror movie tripe. It happens all the time. You set up that, and then you can make reference to every single other horror movie in the world. And you make them very blatant and very obvious, so everyone who's ever seen a commercial knows what it is. Then you have a solid horror movie musical. I think the whole reason why they wanted to make it Evil Dead is because Ash himself is iconic, and and the Evil Dead brand name itself sells tickets. I think that's a terrible reason why to do anything, and I really feel that's what the scriptwriters of this were going for. I think that's wrong. I absolutely think that's wrong. Yes, you need to make a profit on things. That's why people do musicals, is because they'll make a profit off of them. But why not be original? Why not create something more original to yourself, and then we can sit there and laugh oh, Friday the 13th reference, oh, Halloween reference, oh, I don't know what horror movie that is. Is that Child's Play? But that's still funny. That would work so much more than taking something so specific that it is in the mainstream for the most part. It's still really not, but it exists in our world, in our consciousness. We know about it, but not a lot of people know it. The two people I was sitting next to never seen the movies. They know, this is my boomstick. They know that line, but they don't know the movies, so why reference the movies? There was a moment, the end of the script, I don't know why they ended it like this. I wouldn't have ended it like this, because what happens is, the first act is Evil Dead 1, and then partway into Evil Dead 2. And actually, the ending of the first act is brilliant. The ending of the first act is so much fun. I love the ending of the first act, and then it leads into like a great beginning of the second act. So that was fun. That was actually really, I thought that was a really good idea. But then the second act is the second movie stretched out. That's fine. I love the second movie. Great. But when they end it, instead of, because, spoiler alert, because the ending of the second movie ends with Ash being pulled through time and becoming the hero that the book references, which I don't think they reference in the stage show. I don't remember them referencing it. I remember them making fun of the fact that he was able to cure himself of being turned into a Deadite, which is actually explained by him being the chosen one and can't be corrupted by evil. They explain that, but you make a joke out of it instead. Be like, isn't that weird, guys? Why am I cured now? Isn't that weird, audience? Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. I didn't like that. I thought that was really lame. I actually crossed my arms, and under my breath, I was like, they explain it. Not very, to be fair, they don't like, this is why he can resist it. You have to actually listen to what's going on and pay a little bit of attention. Because Ash, by the third movie, knows everything about Deadites. But anyways, the ending of the second movie, he gets pulled through time, and he ends up in, I think, 1300 AD, I think is what it was. And that's where he ends up, and the knights see him kill a Deadite, and then they hail him as king, because he becomes a chosen one, and forms the image that is the image of the chosen one on the book that Annie shows him earlier in the film. Why the frig would you set the ending of the musical, the ending of the third film, while he's back in S-Mart and fights the Evil Dead again? The worst reason for this was that the person sitting next to me sees him and turns, because he cuts off his hand in the musical and in the movies. He cuts it off because it gets possessed by evil. She turns to me and goes, oh, hey, I saw him use his finger. That was bad. And I had to turn to her and go like, well, actually, no, you missed an entire movie where he gets a robotic hand installed. I shouldn't have to explain that. Now, if the purpose of the script was to get people to go out and watch the movies, great. Awesome. No one's going to go watch the movie after seeing the musical. Because that's what they wanted to see, was a campy musical. They don't want to see, quote-unquote, disgusting horror film. I don't think it's disgusting, but other people might. I thought it was very funny. It's very dark humor. And the effects, though they may disturb you, are so fun to watch. They're so fun. I forgot how much I loved the ending of Evil Dead 1 with all the claymation. It's so cheesy, it's great. Absolutely great. Loved it. So yes, my biggest issue was the script. If I was to change one thing, though, with the stage production, because they did a lot of things, there's a lot of things I'm leaving out of the stage production because I want you to see it. I want you to see some of the things they do. I don't want to ruin jokes. I don't want to ruin a lot of things they do, because a lot of things they do are great, and they put a lot of work into it, and they were good. Like I said, I wasn't laughing out loud at everything, but I was smiling. One thing I wish they did do, though, is that one of the big draws of the Evil Dead musical is that there's a splash zone, because there's so much blood. It's a very bloody... If you sit in the splash zone, do expect to get soaked, because you're going to. But one thing I love about the second movie that they don't do in this musical, and I would have loved to see it, is that all the Deadites have different colored blood. Not everything is red. Yes, there's a lot of red blood, but there's also green, and there's also black, and blah, 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 blah. That would have been a lot of fun to see that in the stage production. That not everyone's getting sprayed with just blood, but you get sprayed with this gross purpley black blood and this bright green blood, this dark green blood. I think that would have been a lot more charming. Personally, I would have really thought that was really cool, and I would have really appreciated that as a fan of the movies. Okay, so to summarize this film, I know it's to summarize the stage show, because I know it's 29 minutes now. If you like campy musicals, go see it. In fact, in general, if you like theater, if you like musicals, and if you like a style of theater that is different from the ordinary, because this is very different from the ordinary, and if you want to see, and if you really like dancing, if you like singing, because the acting in general is very strong, I honestly recommend you go see this. I honestly do. I know I kind of shit on it a little bit. I shit on it from the perspective of a fan of the film, not so much. I shit on it from the perspective of a fan of the film and someone who doesn't like movie musical adaptations. That's why I'm shitting on it. But as someone who is in the world of theater and who appreciates good theater and hard work, good effort, and a good show put forward, I recommend see this show. I personally give it, on my personal level, I give it 3 out of 5. Because the things that, in my opinion, are holding it back is the script. The people on stage, the people behind the curtain, those people did a brilliant job. They did a great job with the source material they had. It is entertaining. I walked away happy. But I can only recommend a 3 out of 5 because of how much explaining I had to do to my friends and how much that only I, like, it felt like only I'm saying only I, there could have been others who got it too, obviously, but how much only I got out of the musical joke-wise. That's why I say 3 out of 5. Don't take your grandmother to it, unless your grandmother is, like, really cool. But I'm only giving this a 3 out of 5. What's holding it back is the script. The script itself is just like the Necronomicon. The moment you open it up, you change this world forever. May it be for better or for worse. Some things just weren't meant to be read.